folks, it's a new day, the channel where we talk about the real ideas to help people grow personally, professionally, and financially. We are your hosts again, Thomas Sullivan, Sean Loetscher. Today's topic, we're going to be kicking off our financial sections with talking about the U.S. tax brackets and the U.S. tax history. Let's dive right into it. This is the top tax brackets ever since the inception or the enforcement of the income tax from 1913 all the way up until 2020. We're going to go through and point out a couple key spots that we like to point out with the people that we see, and hopefully there will be some key takeaways. So Sean, why don't you take it away and start talking about taxes.
So before this time, between 1909 and 1913 was Congress's temporary income tax. When they needed it, they felt like they could, ask the people if they were okay with passing the taxes and paying for them, and they generally were. It was generally something crazy.
So this 7% tax here that was implemented in 1913, this was put into effect on those folks making more than $500,000. If you think about it, this tax didn't really affect too many individuals or taxpayers because not a lot of people were making over $500,000 in 1913. In 1941, this was when we were entering into World War II. Wars are expensive, and so the U.S. needed a lot more money. So what they did is they said that we're going to take a tax of 81% of the incomes of those individuals making over $5 million. At this time, not a lot of people were making $5 million. $5 million is a lot of money today, let alone in 1941, okay? But the government soon realized that they needed even more money, okay? So what did? They raised the tax from 81% of $5 million. They raised the tax percentage from 81 to 88%, and they lowered the threshold in which that put you into that top tax bracket. So from $5 million to $200,000. So it's scooping up a lot more people using an even bigger net to tax those individuals. In 1945, 94% was the highest tax percentage that has ever been implemented or put in place in the U.S. since taxes have started. Not a lot of folks know this. When I am talking with people and we're talking about taxes, I always ask, what's the highest tax percentage you think we've ever had? I think the highest guess I've ever gotten was around 65%. So people are very surprised to see that it was 94% over $200,000. Little side note that the proposed taxation at this time was actually 100%, and they were talked down to 94%.
So between the years of 1987 and 1988, the government generated the highest revenue it has in its history from income taxes. And the way they did that is kind of how Thomas talked about before. They did it in two ways. So if you see here in 1987, if you made over $90,000, 38% of that was going to taxes. Just a year later, they actually lowered both of them. They lowered the tax rate by 10%, 10.5%, and then they decreased the threshold by almost 2/3. So if you think about it, they decreased both of them, but they still generated the highest revenue they have in its history.
Yeah, this made people feel very comfortable at the time because they saw taxes going down. They saw taxes going from a 38.5 down to a 28. And so they were happy about it, but they didn't really take into consideration the bracket that would put them there in that top tax bracket, which also substantially went down, as Sean said. So after looking at the tax percentages and the brackets of the U.S. here, what I'm going to pull up is actually the U.S. debt clock. This is a running ticker that keeps tracks of debts, revenues, incomes, things like that. We're going to point out two very important numbers here. First being the U.S. national debt. This is at $26 trillion. This number is climbing by over $30,000 every second. This essentially can be thought about as a credit card that the government has the opportunity to swipe, but they do not have to pay back or make that monthly payment. That's where we come in as taxpayers. The debt per taxpayer, whether we like it or not, is $213,000. Okay, not something that I like. No. Now, The other number I like to point out is our U.S. unfunded liabilities. This is at $153 trillion and climbing by about $120,000 per second. That is a lot of money. Now, this is what the government has agreed to pay for, but has yet to write the check or transfer the cash.
The 3 ways that the government can help mitigate this problem would be to first decrease spending. Now, historically speaking, think back, how good do you think that the government has been historically with decreasing spending over the years? In my personal opinion, once they got their hand in the cookie jar, it was almost impossible to take that hand out of the cookie jar.
Yeah.
The second way would be to issue bonds. This is essentially fixing the problem in the short term because they're issuing long-term debt, so they're increasing their debt portfolio. And then the last way would be to increase taxes. And again, historically speaking, that is where they have leaned on the most in the past.
It's the easiest one for them to do. So again, going back to this tax sheet, throughout the time of taxation, our average tax or average top tax bracket is effectively 57%. This is higher than what most folks think it would be. A very important factor to look at when planning your future is taxes. Okay, a lot of individuals that we know and that we see are using what is called a tax-deferred vehicle. These are the 3 most prevalent are 401ks, 403bs, and traditional IRAs. Okay, so if we were going into retirement with, let's just say, $2 million in our tax-deferred vehicle, we'd be pretty happy, right? Well, the thing that we have not taken into consideration is that this $2 million is not just it's not all ours. We owe the government a share, okay? And so let's say that taxes stay exactly the same to where they are now, at a 37%. And this is 2020. So if you're watching this in the future, 2020, we can see that your share, you're only going to keep 1.2 million of your own $2 million. You have to write a check to the IRS for $740,000. What if taxes are to go up? What if they go up to just the average? Now, the government is keeping more money than you are. It's an extremely important factor to look at, again, when we plan our future.
So there's 2 questions to always keep in mind, and the first being, what tax bracket will you be in retirement? And most people don't know this answer, and to be honest, quite frankly, it's a question mark for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what taxes are going to look like in the future. And then the second question is, what deductions will you have when you take this money? Will children still be living at home? Will you still be giving money to charity?
Still be paying on your mortgage?
Yeah.
A lot of factors to take into consideration. So in conclusion, after looking at the tax bracket chart, we kind of want to propose 2 questions. Where are taxes headed in the future? In understanding and researching taxes now, of course we're doing this to understand where the taxes are going in the future. So we propose that to you. Where do you think taxes are headed in the future? Also, what can we do now to help ourselves prepare not only today, but also towards retirement and towards the end of our life to be better equipped to handle these tax consequences, if you will, or these the tax turbulence that we see coming.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in today to Grind, the channel where we talk about the real ideas that help people grow personally, professionally, and financially. Thomas and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you did, be sure to like, comment below, subscribe, and of course, share with your friends. If you have any comments or want to bounce some ideas off of, please be sure to email us at grind@theamericagroup.com. And just remember, keep grinding.